Chapter 11 On the Sarpayajna. Suta said, O Munis, seeing now the king lifeless and his son a mere boy, the ministers themselves performed all his funeral ceremonies. First, they burned the king on the banks of the Ganges without uttering any mantra, as his death was an accidental one due to a snake bite. Afterward, they had an effigy of the king made of kusha grass, placed it on a funeral pyre, and burned it with sandalwood and scented wood. The priest then performed and completed his funeral obsequies, reciting the Vedic mantras, and distributed various offerings in charity to the Brahmins, along with gold, food, and clothing, so that the king might attain heaven. Next, at an auspicious moment, the ministers installed the child prince on the throne, gladdening the hearts of the subjects. All the populace of the cities, towns, and villages acknowledged the child prince Janmejaya, who was endowed with all royal qualities, as their king. The Dhatri gave him all necessary instructions about his duties. The child prince gradually grew in years and became endowed with great intellect. When Janmejaya reached the age of 11, the family priest duly initiated him with the Gayatri Mantra, and he studied it properly. Then Kripacharya taught him the science of archery, Dhanurveda, perfectly, just as Dronacharya had taught Arjuna and Parshuram had taught Karna. By and by, Janmejaya mastered all the sciences and became very powerful and indomitable to his enemies. As he was skilled in archery, he was equally proficient in other branches of the Vedas. Truthful, self-controlled, and religious, King Janmejaya acquired full knowledge of the Dharmashastras, philosophies and law books, and Arthashastra, economics, and governed his kingdom like Dharma's son, Yudhishthira. The king of Kashi gave his all-auspicious daughter, Vapustama, in marriage to King Janmejaya, who was adorned with a golden coat of armor. King Janmejaya, with a beautiful Vapustama, casting sidelong glances, looked as delighted as King Vichitravirya when he married the daughter of Kashiraja, or as Arjuna when he married Subhadra. Then, the king began to enjoy his time with his lotus-eyed queen Vapustama in the forests and gardens, just as Shatakratu, Indra, enjoys with Shachi. The able ministers conducted satisfactorily the reins of government, and the subjects, well governed, passed away their time with cheerful hearts. In the meanwhile, a Muni named Uttanka, being much troubled by Takshaka, thought about who could help him in taking revenge on Takshaka. Seeing King Parikshit's son, the king Janmejaya, as a proper person, he came to Hastina to the king and spoke thus, O good king, you do not know when to do a thing that ought to be done. You are doing at present what ought not to be done, and you are not doing what should be done now. There is nothing of anger or energy within you. You act as a child does, so you do not know the meaning of the sastras, nor do you know your former enemy. So, what shall I pray before you? Hearing this, Janmejaya said, O highly fortunate one, I do not know who my enemy is. What wrong is there to be redressed? Please speak out what I am to do. Uttanka said, O king, the wicked Takshaka killed your father. Ask about the death of your father from your counselors. Suta said, hearing these words, King Janmejaya asked his ministers. They replied, Your father died from the bite of the snake Takshaka. Then the king spoke, The cause of my father's death is the Brahman's curse. What is the fault of Takshaka in this matter? Please explain. Uttanka said, It was Takshaka who gave an abundance of wealth to Kashyapa, who was coming to cure your father of Takshaka's poison, and made him desist from his purpose. So, O king, is not that Takshaka, then, your father's great enemy and his slayer? O king, in former days, when Pramadwara, the dearest wife of the Muni Ruru, died of a snake bite in her unmarried state, Ruru made her alive again. But Ruru made the promise, whichever serpent I see, I will take away its life by striking it with a club. O king, thus making the resolve, he began to kill snakes wherever he found them with his club. And thus, in his course of travel all around the earth, he saw within a forest an aged, terrible water snake, Dhonda serpent, and immediately lifted his club to kill it. Angrily, he struck a blow on it, when the snake replied, O Brahmana, why are you striking me thus? I have not caused any offense to you. Ruru said, O serpent, my dearest wife died of a snake bite. Since then, I have made this resolve, under great provocation and sorrow, to kill snakes. Hearing this, the water snake Dundubha replied, I do not bite. Those who bite are a different class of snakes. Simply on account of my bearing a body similar to them, that you will strike me is not quite proper. Hearing these beautiful, human words from the mouth of a serpent, Ruru asked, Who are you? Why have you become this Dundubha snake? The snake replied, O Brahmana, I was formerly a Brahman. There was a friend of mine named Khyas, very religious, truthful, and self-controlled. Once, he was staying in his Agnihotra room, and I foolishly terrified him by placing before him an artificial snake created by me from the leaves of trees. He became so much bewildered with fear and shuddered so terribly that he at length cursed me, saying, O one of blunt intellect, as you have terrified me with the snake, having no poison, so you shall become a snake of that type. Immediately, I turned into a snake, and when I entreated that Brahmana, his anger abated a little, and he said again, O snake, Pramti's son Ruru will no doubt free you of this curse. I am that snake, and you are also that Ruru. Now hear my words in conformity with dharma. The highest dharma of the Brahmana is non-killing. There is no doubt in this. The wise Brahmanas ought to show mercy to all. No harm of killing is to be committed anywhere except in yajna, sacrifice. Killing is only allowed in a yajna, for at the sacrifice, the animal killed attains the highest goal. Hence, killing in sacrifice is not reckoned as an act of killing. Uttanka said, that Brahmana was then freed from the serpent body, and Ruru, too, desisted from killing since then. O king, Ruru gave life back to that girl and married her. But even then, remembering the former enmity, he killed the snakes. But, O chief of Bharatha's family, you are staying without any care, without any anger toward the snakes, and without any revenge for the previous wrong. O king of kings, your father died high up in the air without any bath or charity, due to be done at the time of death. So rescue your father by killing his enemies, the snakes. That son is dead, though living, who does not consider the act of his father's enemy as inimical. Until you kill the snakes, your father's enemies, your father's hell life will not be freed. O king, now remember the wrong done to your father and perform the sacrifice to the Great Mother, denominated as the Sarpa Yajna, the sacrifice of snakes. Suta said, hearing the words of Uttanka, King Janmejaya sadly wept and shed tears and thought within himself, Alas, fie to me, I am a great stupid. Hence, I feel myself proud but in vain. Where can his honor be whose father, bitten by a snake, has gone down to hell? Now, I will, no doubt, commence the Sarpa Yajna and ensure the destruction of all the snakes in the blazing sacrificial fire, and thus deliver my father from hell. Thus coming to a conclusion, he called all his ministers and said, O ministers, better make arrangements duly for a great sacrifice. Have a suitable holy site on the banks of the Ganges, selected and measured by the Brahmanas, and have a beautiful sacrificial hall built up on 100 pillars, and prepare a sacrificial altar within this. O ministers, when all these preliminaries are completed, I will commence with great eclat the great Sarpa Yajna, sacrifice of snakes. In that yajna, the snake Takshaka will be the animal victim, and Uttanka, the great Muni, will be the sacrificial priest. So invite early the all-knowing Brahmanas, versed in the Vedas. Suta said, thus at the command of the king, the able ministers collected all the materials of the sacrifice and prepared a big sacrificial altar. When the oblations were offered on the sacrificial fire, calling on the snakes, Takshaka became greatly distressed with fear and took refuge in Indra, saying, Save my life. Indra then gave hope to Takshaka, trembling with fear, and made him sit on his asana, encouraging him with words, No fear. O snake, do not fear anymore. Muni Uttanka, seeing that Takshaka had taken Indra's protection, and that Indra had given him hopes of no fear, called on Takshaka with Indra to come to the fire with an anxious heart. Takshaka, then, seeing no other way, took refuge in the greatly religious Astika, the son of the Muni Jaratkaru, born of the family of Yayavra. The Muni's son Astika came to the sacrificial hall and chanted hymns in praise of Janmejaya. The king, too, seeing the Muni boy greatly learned, worshipped him and said, What for have you come? I will give you what you desire. Hearing this, Astika prayed, O highly enlightened one, let you desist from this sacrifice. The truthful king prayed thus again and again, stopped the Sarpa Yajna to keep the Muni's word. Vesampayana then recited the whole of Mahabharata to the king to cheer up his heart. But the king, hearing the whole Mahabharata, could not find peace and asked Vedavyasa, How can I get peace? My mind is constantly being burned with sorrows. Say, what am I to do? I am very miserable. Hence my father Pariksit, the son of Abhimanyu, has died an unnatural death. O lucky one, see that a Kshatriya's death in a deadly battlefield or in an ordinary battle is praiseworthy. Even his death in his own house, if followed up according to natural laws and with his rules, is commendable. But my father did not get such a death. Under the Brahmana's curse, why did he, quite senseless, quit his life high up in the air? O son of Satyavati, now advise me so that my father, who is now in hell, can again go up to the heavens, and that my heart may find its way to peace. Thus ends the 11th chapter of the second book on the Sarpayajna in the Mahapurana Srimad Devi Bhagavatam of 18,000 verses.